We have your tier list for August 2022, no ban list edition. I'll make 30% of you guys have not smashed 11 crap out, subscribe button, smash it so we can climb up the 100k ladder here. Oh boy, Dinosaur. Does this even deserve a spot on like the map? Like, I haven't seen Dinosaur do anything. I'm gonna put this in the bad tier. I want to be optimistic here and be like, yeah, dinosaurs, yeah, you can do something. But like, what do you want to do against, Sprite setting up a whole like combo belt? I mean, I guess you can play like Dark Rule or No More and like try to clean up boards, but like you're not even extremely good at doing that anymore. Like, it's actually kind of sad. All right, Alistair the Invoker, Alistair's definitely better than Dinosaurs, but like, once again, what this deck could do in the former lifespan of its abilities, nowhere near what it needs to do in order to keep up with this. Like, the mighty have fallen here, and it's really, really sad at the end of the day. Despia, I'm going to put it like, it's not tier 2 just yet. I think the deck is continuing to fall from grace very, very much so, but it still hasn't touched the point where it's into the lower or early up tier 2 format. Now, depending on how restrictions might affect this deck in the possible future might depend on that, but I think right now that doing anything too crazy to this is just that. Like, I think this deck is good to stay where it is. And then there's, of course, the Predaplant variant. Now, I think the Predaplant variant, and this is really sad because I think the Predapractice build is really good at the end of the day, but pure Despia just kind of feels one step ahead of everything else that you really want to be able to kind of put on the table here in terms of generating, said raw advantage. So Despia as a whole component is in the 1.5 category. I do think that, the Predaplant variant in terms with this does float in here as well, but pure Predaplant as a deck, I'm still tying it. These two tie together very much so. Marin says I'm going to put in tier 2. Honestly, after the representation at the NAWCQ where a lot of players just lost their mind that Marin says was a deck, I was laughing really, really hard. All right, like, we'd seen this deck showing up as a rogue contender for a little while, but so many people were just like, oh my god, like, it's not doing anything. It's because you weren't prepared for it. All right, like, the minute you let your guard down to see this deck enter into the format, you literally played yourself. Like, it's the biggest clown emoji that I've seen all year long here. I also want to put Exosister on the possibility of being a tier 2 deck. Circular really, really, really helps this deck out a lot. Alright, do not underestimate good generic Cyverse support for the extension chick attendees, because it is solid, ladies and gentlemen. I think a lot of players are going to have a very hard time analyzing what this deck will do or how to build the best variant for this deck. All things considered, I do think that this deck has a lot of hopefulness going for it here. So we'll see where this goes. Sword Soul is ahead of Despia, but it is no longer what I would consider tier 1 at this point in time. But with that being said, though, yeah, it's really sad actually, because it's going to depend on like how hand traps settle up in the format and like how fast this deck can keep up with the existing format. But I almost have a feeling that it's going to struggle wuggle very, very hard in order to kind of keep up with some of, the innovations and things in the format. So I'm going to put it here. Tron is going to be like my border deck. I think the Tron combo is amazing. I think the things that this deck does so far ahead of really what a lot of the decks can handle. Still very interruptible though via hand traps. If DD Crow comes back into the format to kind of mess around with tier elements, I do think the Tron will get hurt by that, because obviously, when they tribute the Ben 10 for the cost of the effect, and like, oh, the Ben 10 hasn't resolved it, and you just crow it, yeah, you're going to run into some pretty big issues there. So it's just that. I also want to put Eldlich down here in the rogue category. Honestly, Skill Drain, still fantastic card. Obviously, with Runic coming later on in the format into September, but the deck has kind of fallen off. But it can still top. That's what like our definition of tier 2 / like lower rogue is. Like, it's still there. I still want to put M-Pen in company at tier 1. I think that this deck is obviously, I'd say, still further ahead than everything in this category here. Once again, remember, this is tied to this. I do think that really M-Pen is going to be one of the best decks in the format, and a lot of players are going to have a hard time handling that. Exosister, I also want to put at 1.5. Now, the reason why I put this here is it depends on what else happens to run around in the higher format here. Because this deck has a solid matchup against a lot of things, but your Flunder matchup isn't the best. I think a lot of players are going to have a very hard time, coping with the fact that we might not be in a true, triangle format. We might actually have something a little bit different in the long run. Brigade, I'm going to put... I don't know. I'm going to put it in Rogue. They did get a Link 1 in the Scareclaw monster that you can beam out via the Brigade effects, which is kind of cool at the end of the day, but like, how much more does this really facilitate advantage-wise? It still struggles to some of the hardest hitting things out here in the format, and it's really sad, actually. Like, I want this deck to be a lot better. Virtual World I'm also going to put down here as well. Virtual World, while it can still keep up and catch a lot of players off guard at the metagame, it's just that. It's a rogue contender. Like, the deck does nothing special to facilitate anything else that the other decks in the format can't do better, but it can still win and top 1-2 offshot events. Earthbox, I'm going to put behind Dinosaurs. Once again, Regulus and company make this deck way stronger. All right, like, so much better. But, like, how much better? Well, not that much. The Punk Synchro package, I think this deck is... I think Punk everything as a whole is very, very scary. Especially for, like, what this deck aims to do. And I don't know, some of, like, the crazy interactions are very, very nuts. But I definitely am going to put this in tier 1 because this deck is very, very, very solid. Rexstrom and Company Dinomorphia, I'm going to put down here in Rogue. The deck definitely lost a lot of its steam, which is very, very sad at the end of the day. I really wanted this deck also to kind of take off, but it's very much still a rogue contender in my personal opinion here. We also have Dragonlink. I think Dragonlink is very solidly a tier 1 deck. This deck does what Sprite does, but better at certain points. It's really weird to say that. Salad, I'm also going to put down here in Rogue. This deck just struggles too hard. Like, I understand, like, yeah, Roar Rage is really, really rough, but I don't know, the deck still has issues. Sky Striker, I'm also going to put in borderline, like, 1.5. Like, this deck is still going to be, like, the king rogue contender. Like, as long as Mystic Mine exists, this deck will exist. Alright, like, people need to understand that. Alright? It is obviously the hard carry for sure, but nothing we can do about that. Sprite, I think Sprite comes into the format in about mid-tier 1. While the deck does make some very, very intimidating boards, if this does take off, and you see things like Droplet shift back into the format being like just the better counter options to it, then that's your issue. Right? As long as counters exist to this deck, it might flop. I think putting it here is fine. I also am going to put tier elements side by side with it. I do think that the graveyard strategy is fine until the Ishizu package comes out. That just makes this deck even crazier at the end of the day. I think for it to lead super early on in this stage, I think is, once again, also fine. Evil Twins, I'm also going to put back here in the... they can go in the rogue category. I mean, okay, so, like, here's the thing, alright? Like, if you play the Sprite version of this deck, then obviously it goes right here. Because, like, if you tie this with this, oh yeah, this package is 100%, like, good. But if you're just playing pure Evil Twins without the Sprite package, you're doing yourself a disservice. I'm going to leave Evil Twins sitting here next to Sprite to signify the variation of these two being playable. But, that's to be seen more here. So you guys think about the upcoming format. Please leave a comment down below. Tell me what you guys think. Make sure you guys smash the crap out of the subscribe button. I'll see your beautiful faces back here later in the day, guys. Peace out. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.